Good evening from Washington. I'm Larry O'Connor, and our top story tonight is the top story of the entire week, actually, the growing scandal around President Joe Biden's haphazard handling of classified information from the Obama administration. Classified information, apparently, about Iran, Ukraine, China. How serious is it? Well, now we've got a special counsel appointed to delve into this story in detail. Former federal prosecutor and former deputy assistant to President Trump, Kash Patel. Kash, thanks for joining us. By the way, I want to point out you've got a brand new book in the works. It's called Government Gangsters, and I think it sort of touches on a lot of what we're going to talk about here, doesn't it?
It does. Thanks so much for having me. And Government Gangsters is out for pre-sale. Thanks, Larry.
Excellent. You bet. At governmentgangsters.com, by the way, is where you can get that. All right. So let's start with the details here because, it's funny. It's almost like a bit of a punchline in some circles here in
Mhm.
Washington. It's like, oh, yeah, Joe had classified documents. They were in the garage and he keeps his Corvette in there. He was almost, focusing so much on his Corvette instead of the documents. Cash, you,
No,
you
you're
were on
absolutely.
the you work with Devin Nunes on the Intelligence Committee, and you've been a special prosecutor. You know how serious this is, don't you?
I'm glad you're the show that's going to take this seriously because you're right. Too many people are talking about it in a punchline fashion. Look, we're talking about multiple sets of classified documents that, if the reporting's accurate, discuss China, Russia, Iran, the Ukraine, our most sensitive intelligence collection that we have in the United States to defend American priorities, have been out in the open wilderness for 7 years running. And every day we find out there's more and more documents in more and more locations, not just his office, not just his garage, but now the kitchen cabinets. And it's not a punchline, it's not a joke. My concern as a former deputy director of national intelligence for this intelligence just being out there and mishandled continuously is, do our enemies now have leverage over the sitting president of the United States? Does the CCP know what's in those documents? Is that why they were taken? Is there a tie to Hunter Biden? And who handled all these documents along these 7 years? If we take President Biden at his word, he had nothing to do with it, doesn't even know about it. So his staff, his personal attorneys, White House attorneys, campaign lawyers, and where did
Right.
they put it? Because none of it was in a safe, secure vault. All of that's illegal.
Let's delve into a couple of these things a little deeper because I want to make sure it doesn't go over people's heads. The president's story here, that I guess his lawyers told him to repeat when asked, was, listen, I didn't move him. I didn't touch him. I didn't even know they were there. As if in some way that exonerates him. That actually makes it worse. Explain that to everybody.
No, you're absolutely right. That means not just Vice President Biden, now President Biden, is liable under the criminal statutes for the mishandling of classified information because there's no intent requirement. Remember the legal fiction James Comey created to exonerate Hillary Clinton of actually mishandling classified information? It's a legal fiction. It doesn't exist because there's no intent requirement. And take it one step further, going back to what we just said, who are all the people that handled it? Because every person that touched it is mishandling classified information. And did they even
Right.
have a security clearance? That's a whole nother question. Should they even ever have had access to that intelligence? I mean, just think
Right.
about it. If it was Trump and his garage door and Don Jr., we would be having a completely different conversation.
Yeah, in fact, in a few moments, we're going to talk about the comparisons with Trump. I'm loath to even do it, but the media is spending so much time telling us how this is different. That it is different than Trump. What Biden has done here is much worse.
It
We'll
is.
get into those details in a moment, but you're talking about access. Let's be real here. Hunter
Mhm.
Biden had access to all of these documents without any
Yeah.
chain of custody issues, without having to sign out, without any cameras on him. He could have gotten to these documents at any given moment. How serious is that, Cash Patel?
That is the most concerning thing that almost nobody's talking about because now we know unequivocally that Hunter Biden is on the payroll of firms that are sponsored by the CCP. That is not our number one enemy in the world when it comes to American national security. And Hunter Biden, who had access to all of these classified documents. And one more thing, by the way, the house where the documents were found, the second set of documents, is in Hunter Biden's name. So by default and definition under the statutes, he was in unlawful possession of classified intelligence. And I know for a fact he didn't have a skiff there, and he certainly didn't have a security clearance. So my concern again, as an American cheering for national security and Biden to succeed, is that we are now compromised. The president
Yeah.
of the United States is compromised by the CCP, Russia, and Ukraine, and that's the least of our problems. They're about to
One other
expand.
aspect, one other, I mean, it sounds like tonight's episode is all about the things that no one else is talking about. But let's remember, President Biden has spent a huge amount of his time as president in that very home in Wilmington, Delaware, and it
Mhm.
is not under the same protocols as the White House. In other words, we don't know who's been visiting him there. There are no visitor logs. Nobody goes to visit the president in his home and signs in so that it's public information. Who knows who's been in that same building in that very garage with those classified documents?
You're absolutely right. And look, we can't get the visitor logs, like you said, because they're not there. They don't exist. That's a whole nother problem that we need to solve going down the road. But what we can access, Larry, are the emails and text messages from Secret Service, because whether or not there are logs, you cannot enter the vicinity of a president of the United States, be it at his beach house or villa or where
Okay.
have you, unless Secret Service knows you are on the property. That means there's a record of it, and somebody has to go get it either by FOIA or Congress has to subpoena those records, because it's part of the FBI investigation, or what should be part of the FBI investigation is
Right.
how big of a sprawling conspiracy or group of people had access to these documents, and what in the world were they doing with them for 7 years?
Well, Kash Patel, that leads us to our next topic, and that is the special counsel. See, Merrick Garland, the attorney general, he did the right and responsible thing. He appointed a special counsel, and I'm sure he'll get to the bottom of it. Hey, you worked in the Justice Department. What do you know about this guy?
Look, on paper, I'm in violent agreement with special counsels because they serve a unique purpose in the judicial system, but that's on paper. We are now seeing the destruction of the special counsels. Special counsels have become the special forces operators to cover up government corruption. Just look at Rod Rosenstein's appointment of Bob Mueller. Now we have Robert Hur. Who's Robert Hur, you would ask? He was
Yeah.
Rod Rosenstein's #1 lawyer at the Department of Justice when Rod Rosenstein was the effective attorney general for the United States of America. Why does that matter? Rod Rosenstein is the one when Devin Nunes and I issued dozens of subpoenas to DOJ and FBI who blocked the production of documents that exposed the lies at the FISA court and the involvement of DNC and Fusion GPS. Who was his lawyer advising him to do that? Robert Hur. And who
Wow.
also requested, and we've got the receipts, Larry, we're going to put them out soon, that the Nunes memo, which has come up again because of the Twitter file story yesterday, which is a separate saga, but related to Robert Hur, who wrote emails saying we needed to block the release of the Nunes memo, we, the DOJ, under Rosenstein and Hur. So this guy is now the special prosecutor to look into classified documents when he was the guy in charge of the government cover-up of the biggest corruption scandal in judicial process history. This
Yeah.
person was handpicked to be the special counsel. There's no coincidence, and all roads lead back to Russiagate, as they always do with these government gangsters.
Oh, but they keep calling him a Trump appointee, this Robert Hur. He's a Trump appointee. And by the way, listen, I have some quarrels with some of the appointments that President Trump
Yeah.
made, but he was getting some bad advice. But part of the cynical nature of naming this guy in our final 30 seconds here, Cash, is if he does find something on Biden and they push him on it, well, what do you expect? He's just a Trump appointee. But if he exonerates Biden, wow, look at that. A Trump appointee exonerated him. Win, heads I win, tails you lose.
It's political genius. And guess who's the one person that this guy, Robert Hur, reports to? Merrick Garland, the
Yeah.
worst government gangster of them all. And he gets to decide, not the special counsel. Merrick Garland gets to decide whether Joe Biden or Hunter Biden are ever charged. And American people need to remember that.
Well, that's why the name of his book, Kash Patel's book, is Government Gangsters, The Deep State, the Truth, and the Battle for Our Democracy. It's on sale now at governmentgangsters.com. And we've got one more segment with Kash Patel when we talk about the comparisons with Trump's Mar-a-Lago documents. That's next on O'Connor Tonight.